Hey guys, welcome back to the darker side of human nature. This is volume 2, and if you thought the first was unsettling, you haven't seen anything yet. This time, there is no pretense of guilt, no veil of regret. The confessions you are about to hear, they weren't shared out of remorse. They were bragged about, laid bare with a twisted kind of pride. These aren't people searching for absolution. They're people who revel in the chaos they've caused. They did it for fun, for entertainment, for the simple thrill of watching someone else's life crumble. These stories come from the same hidden corners as before. A dark web form where anonymity strips away the masks we wear in the daylight. These aren't just secrets. They're a raw, unapologetic glimpse into the darkest impulses people act on when they think no one's watching. So here's my advice. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and clear your mind. You are not just about to listen. You are about to step into their shoes, see through their eyes, and feel what they felt. But remember, once you enter this world, it's hard to leave it behind. Viewer discretion isn't just advised, it's necessary. What you are about to hear isn't just chilling, it's addictive. Are you ready? Let's begin. I know most people see nurses as heroes, caretakers, the kind of people who'd do anything to save a life. Maybe that's true for some, but for me, it's never been about saving lives. I took the job for the control, for the power. I've been a nurse for over 10 years, working mostly night shifts at hospitals and long-term care facilities. The quiet hours, the minimal supervision, it's perfect for someone like me. I always knew I was different from my classmates in nursing school. While they talked about compassion and making a difference, I was more interested in what the human body could endure, how far it could go before breaking. When I started, I played by the rules. Administer the meds, check the vitals, clean up after people who couldn't do it themselves. But after a while, the monotony got to me. Night after night, the same routine. I'd sit at the nurse's station, staring at the monitors, listening to the beeping of heart rate machines. It was boring, until I realized I could do more. I don't know when exactly it started. Maybe it was the first time I saw a patient's vitals drop and chose not to call for help right away, just to see what would happen. Or the time I swapped out a dose of painkillers for saline because I wanted to hear the patient beg for relief. It was subtle at first. Small decisions no one would notice. A missed dose here, a delayed intervention there. If someone questioned it, I always had an excuse. It must have been a charting error. Or I didn't realize the medication wasn't given. Nurses make mistakes all the time, and no one looks too hard when it's just one patient out of many. But I wanted more. The night shifts gave me the perfect opportunity. When the halls were dark and quiet, and most of the staff were either asleep or buried in their own tasks, I had free rein. That's when I started deciding who deserved to live and who didn't. I had my reasons. Some patients were too loud, too demanding, or just plain annoying. Others, I figured, had lived long enough. An 87-year-old with advanced dementia, what's the point in keeping them alive? A 50-year-old alcoholic with end-stage liver disease. They did it to themselves. I didn't kill them outright. That would be too obvious, too messy. Instead, I played with the margins, adjusting dosages, withholding medications, letting infections go untreated. I knew exactly how far I could push before it would look suspicious. Sometimes, I'd hang a bag of IV fluids and purposely let it run dry, just to see how long it would take for someone else to notice. Other times I'd silence alarms on machines, watching the numbers drop until I decided it was time to step in. Or not. There is a thrill in it, knowing you are holding someone's life in your hands. They have no idea. They trust you completely, looking at you like you are their savior, when you are the reason they're suffering. The worst part? No one suspects a thing. There was one patient, though, who sticks with me, a middle-aged man who came in after a heart attack. He wasn't a bad guy, as far as I could tell, but there was something about him. His arrogance, the way he took the staff, that made me want to take him down a notch. He was supposed to be on a strict medication schedule, but I started skipping doses here and there. At first, he just seemed tired, weaker than usual. Then he started complaining of chest pain. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. He got there in the room. The doctors tried to save him, but they couldn't. I stood in the corner, watching them work, knowing I was the reason he was dying. They called it a complication from his previous heart attack. No one questioned the missing meds. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. I still work in healthcare. Different hospital, same routine. I've gotten better at covering my tracks, making sure there is no pattern anyone could trace back to me. But sometimes I wonder if I've pushed my luck too far. All it would take is one slip-up, one nosy coworker, and it could all come crashing down. Do I feel guilty? Not really. I am not some maniac poisoning random people for fun. I make choices based on what I think is fair, who deserves another chance, and who doesn't. It's not like anyone would miss most of them anyway. If you've ever been in the hospital, you've probably been cared for by someone like me. Maybe they're better at hiding it, or maybe they haven't acted on it yet. But trust me, we're out there, and you'd never know. You know that saying, jealousy makes you do crazy things? Yeah, I am proof of that. I did something unforgivable years ago, and the best part, I don't even feel bad. In fact, I still smile every time I think about it. It started with my best friend, Claire. We'd known each other since we were kids, always side by side, but somehow, she always managed to be the one everyone noticed. Claire was prettier, smarter, more popular. Even when we got older, she still had that perfect life. Dream job, dream guy, dream house. And me, I was stuck in the shadows, barely scraping by, watching her get everything I wanted without even trying. Then came the wedding. When she asked me to be her bridesmaid, I wanted to say no. Standing there in some stupid dress, playing second fiddle while she had her fairy tale moment, it sounded like torture, but I said yes because I knew it would give me the perfect chance to ruin it, and I did. The plan wasn't complicated. First, I tampered with the catering. I knew she was using a local vendor, small, family-run, nothing fancy. So I called them pretending to be her, told them to swap out some ingredients for cheaper options, ones I knew weren't fresh. The food still looked fine, but by the end of the night, at least halves were sick. Some even had to leave early, rushing to the bathroom or heading home. It was beautiful chaos. But that wasn't enough. I wanted Claire to suffer, not just for one night, but forever. So, I planted a seed of doubt in her head about the groom. A few weeks before the wedding, I started dropping hints about him being unfaithful. Made up stories about how I'd seen him with another woman, how he'd confided in me, that he wasn't sure about marrying her. I made sure to sound reluctant, like I didn't want to hurt her, but I knew exactly what I was doing. She didn't call off the wedding, but she went through with it with a cloud over her head. I could see it in her eyes during the ceremony. Doubt, suspicion, fear. She wasn't thinking about how happy she was, or how perfect her day should have been. She was wondering if the man standing next to her was lying to her face. That's what I wanted. After the wedding, things fell apart for her pretty quickly. The food poisoning incident got around town, and people started gossiping about how her big day had been a disaster. Her relationship with her new husband was rocky from the start, thanks to the lies I'd fed her. They fought constantly, and within a year, they were divorced. And me, I played the supportive friend through it all. I am so sorry, Claire, I'd say. You deserve so much better. She never suspected a thing. We don't talk anymore. She moved to a new city, started over, and from what I can see on social media, she's doing okay now. Married again, as a kid, living that picture-perfect life. But every time I see one of her posts, I feel this twisted sense of satisfaction, because no matter how happy she looks now, I know I got to her. I know I was the one who knocked her off her pedestal, who made her doubt herself and the people around her. And honestly, it felt good. People like Claire never have to struggle. They get handed everything on a silver platter, and they don't even realize how lucky they are. She deserved to know what it's like to lose, to have everything crumble around her. Do I regret it? Not even a little. If anything, I wish I'd done more. I've been holding this in for years, but I think it's time to come clean. Not because I feel bad. I don't. Honestly, I don't think anyone would have ever known if I didn't say anything. But T here is something satisfying about admitting the things you've done, especially when they're as messed up as this. For a while, I worked as a housekeeper in a mid-range hotel, the kind of place where people stay for business trips or weekend getaways. Not too fancy, but not a dive either. It was an easy job. Clean the rooms, change the sheets, restock the toiletries. Mindless work, really. But the thing about hotel rooms, they're full of secrets. It started with curiosity. On my first day, I cleaned a room where the guest had left their suitcase open. I wasn't supposed to touch their stuff, but I couldn't help myself. I peeked inside, just to see what kind of person they were. It was nothing exciting. Clothes, toiletries, a laptop. But it gave me this weird thrill, knowing I'd seen something they thought was private. That was all it took. From then on, I snooped every chance I got. Suitcases, nightstand drawers, shopping bags. People leave the strangest things behind. Half-written journals, prescription bottles, lingerie. I once found a wad of cash hidden in a shoe and debated taking it, but I decided against it. Stealing wasn't my thing. I wasn't in it for the money. It was the control I liked. The feeling of knowing more about someone than they'd ever guess. It didn't stop there. Sometimes I'd open their food or drinks, just out of curiosity. If someone had a bottle of soda in the mini fridge, I'd take a sip and put it back. If they left a meal unfinished, I'd taste it. I wanted to know what kind of people they were, what choices they made when they thought no one was looking. Most of the time, they never noticed. But that wasn't enough after a while. I don't remember exactly when I got the idea to plant cameras. Maybe it was the day I found a nanny cam in someone's room and realized how small and discreet they could be. I figured if they could spy on their kids, why couldn't I spy on them? I started small, buying a cheap camera online. It was barely bigger than a thumb drive, easy to hide. I tested it in an empty room first, learning how to position it, how to avoid detection. Once I got the hang of it, I started placing cameras in actual guest rooms. I hid them in vents, light fixtures, even behind the TVs. They weren't high quality, but they worked. The footage came straight to my laptop, where I'd watch it after my shift. At first, it was just curiosity, the same as before. Watching people unpack, relax, live their lives behind closed doors. But the more I watched, the more I wanted to see. I started focusing on couples, setting up cameras in the rooms where they stayed. There was something about seeing them in their most private moments, knowing they had no idea I was watching. It became an obsession. I started keeping the recordings, organizing them into folders by room number and date. I told myself it was for my own use, but deep down, I knew it was wrong. Not wrong enough to stop, though. There was one couple I remember vividly. They were young, maybe mid-20s, clearly in love. They stayed for a long weekend, and I recorded everything. The way they laughed, the way they held each other, the way they fought on their last night. Watching them was like having a front row seat to their lives, and I couldn't look away. After they checked out, I kept going back to their footage, replaying it over and over. It wasn't enough to just watch anymore. I wanted to be closer, to feel like I was part of it. One night, I got bold. I used the spare key to let myself into their room after they'd gone. The bed was still unmade. The air still smelled faintly like her perfume. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers over the sheets where they'd slept. It felt intimate, in a way that watching the footage never did. I stayed there for hours, just soaking it in. Over time, I got better at what I was doing. The cameras got smaller, the hiding spots more creative. I stopped caring about getting caught. Guests came and went, oblivious to the fact that their lives were being documented by the person cleaning their room. Eventually, I quit the job. Not because of guilt. Like I said, I don't feel bad. But it started to get boring. Once you've seen enough people's secrets, they all start to look the same. I still have the recordings, though. Hundreds of hours of footage, tucked away on hard drives in a storage box. Sometimes I think about deleting them, but I know I won't, because the truth is, I liked knowing people's secrets. I liked having that power, and if I ever get bored enough, I know exactly how to start again. I don't care if this makes you hate me. I've done worse things than most people could even imagine, and I am not here looking for pity or forgiveness. I just need to get this off my chest. For about 2 years, I ran a scam on Craigslist. It was simple, easy money, and I didn't feel bad about it. At least, not at first. I'd post ads for stuff like furniture, electronics, even cars, things people wanted. The prices were always just low enough to catch attention, but not so low it seemed suspicious. I always made sure to target people who seemed desperate. Single parents looking for a good deal on baby gear, elderly folks trying to save money, people down on their luck. They were the easiest to trick because they wanted to believe they were getting something real. Once they reached out, I'd set up a meeting in a quiet, out-of-the-way location, usually an abandoned lot or a park after dark. I'd tell them I didn't feel comfortable with strangers coming to my house, and they'd always agree. People trust too easily. When they showed up, I'd be waiting with a gun. I never planned to hurt anyone. The gun was just for show, to scare them into handing over their money without a fight. And it worked, most of the time. People would freeze the second they saw the weapon. They'd hand over their cash, their wallets, even their phones, and I'd be gone before they could think straight. I was good at it, careful. I always wore a mask and gloves, and I changed up my meeting spots to avoid patterns. For a while, I thought I'd found the perfect hustle, but then there was the man. I remember every detail about that night. He was a single dad, mid-40s, looking to buy a laptop for his teenage daughter. He told me in his email how important it was for her schoolwork, how money was tight, and he'd been saving for months. I didn't care. All I saw was another easy target. We met in an old parking lot behind a strip mall. It was late, and the area was dead quiet. He pulled up in an old sedan, got out, and started looking around for me. When I stepped out of the shadows with the gun, he froze. "Just give me the money," I said. But he didn't. Instead, he tried to talk to me. He said he didn't have the full amount in cash, that he could give me some now and the rest later. I told him to shut up and hand over what he had, but he wouldn't stop talking. He kept moving, reaching for something in his jacket, and I panicked. I pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening, and for a second, I thought I'd missed. But then he staggered, clutching his side, and I froze, watching as he bled out right there in the parking lot. I should have run, but I couldn't move. He looked up at me, his face pale and confused, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually I grabbed his wallet and phone and took off. He died before anyone found him. I told myself it wasn't my fault, that he shouldn't have moved, that he should have just done what I said. But deep down, I knew better. I'd killed him over a few $100. After that, things weren't the same. I kept running the scam, but I was paranoid, always looking over my shoulder. The thrill I used to feel was gone, replaced by this gnawing sense of unease. I started drinking more, trying to push the guilt away, but it didn't help. The worst part is, no one ever caught me. No one connected me to the man's death or any of the other robberies. As far as the world knows, I don't exist. I am still out there, still running scams. But I've changed my methods. I stick to online cons now. Don't involve face-to-face meetings. It's less risky, but it's not the same. I think about that man a lot, about his daughter, and what she must have gone through when he didn't come home. Sometimes I wonder if she still has the emails he sent me, if she's ever tried to track me down. But then I remind myself, it doesn't matter. What's done is done, and I am not about to turn myself in. Survival comes first, no matter the cost, and I've always been good at surviving. I know this will sound twisted, but I don't care what anyone thinks. I've kept this to myself for years, but I feel like writing it down. Maybe part of me wants to see if anyone else has done something similar. If you think I am a monster, so be it. I am a landlord. I've owned multiple rental properties over the past decade, and I make a comfortable living from it. Most people assume landlords are either lazy or greedy. But the truth is, it's an easy gig if you know how to work the system. For me, though, it became more than just a way to pay the bills. It turned into something else, a hobby, you could say. It started innocently enough, or at least it felt that way at the time. One of my tenants called me late one night, freaking out because she thought someone had broken into her apartment while she was out. Nothing was stolen, and the locks weren't tampered with, but she swore someone had been inside. I checked the place myself and reassured her it was fine. But the whole thing got me thinking, what if there had been someone inside? What if I could see what was happening in my properties without relying on anyone else to tell me? A week later, I installed my first camera. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small pinhole lens hidden in a smoke detector. I told myself it was for security, protection for me and my tenants. If anything went wrong, I'd have proof. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about security. There was a thrill in see what they were doing whenever I wanted, without them ever knowing. I added more cameras over time, always finding creative places to hide them. Vents, light fixtures, even inside decorative items I'd generously provided when they moved in. They never suspected a thing. At first, I'd only check the footage occasionally, like flipping through channels on television. Most of the time, it was boring. People cooking dinner, watching Netflix, arguing about dumb things. But every now and then, I'd catch something more intimate, a glimpse into their private lives that they thought no one could see. That's when it stopped being about security. There was one tenant, though, who changed everything. She moved in about 3 years ago, mid-20s, quiet, the kind of person who kept to herself. I'll call her Anna, though that's not her real name. From the moment I saw her, I was hooked. Anna was different from the others. She had this way of moving, this energy about her that made it impossible to look away. I started watching her foot, ignoring the other properties entirely. Her morning routines, her late-night workouts, the way she sang to herself doing dishes. It became an obsession. I knew her schedule better than she did. I knew when she'd be home, when she'd leave, even how long she usually took in the shower. But it wasn't enough. I wanted to feel closer to her, to see her life from more than just the cold, static angles of my cameras. So one night, I let myself into her apartment. I had a spare key, of course. It was easy. She was asleep when I went in, lying on her side, with her back to the door. Her breathing was soft and steady, her hair spread across the pillow. I stood there for a long time, just watching. There was something surreal about being in her space, seeing the details you don't catch on camera. The faint scent of her perfume, the half-finished glass of wine on the counter, the way her blanket was tangled around her legs. I didn't touch anything. I didn't need to. Just being there was enough. That night I stayed longer than I should have. I knew it was a risk, but I didn't care. The idea of her waking up and finding me there sent a rush through me that I still can't fully explain. Over the months, I went back several times, always at night, always while she was asleep. Sometimes I'd stand in the hallway watching her breathe. Other times I'd sit in her living room imagining what it would be like if she knew I was there. The cameras were still running, of course. They gave me access to her life during the day. But those nighttime visits, they were something else entirely. You might think I was afraid of getting caught, but I wasn't. I was careful, meticulous. I never left a trace, never did anything that would make her suspicious. To her, I was just the friendly landlord who showed up to fix the occasional leaky faucet. But here's the thing. I knew it couldn't last forever. Eventually, Anna moved out. She didn't say why, just gave me her notice and left. I thought about following her, finding out where she went, but I decided against it. The cameras stayed in place, though. The new tenants are fine, I guess, but they're not Anna. I still think about her sometimes. I still have the old footage saved on a hard drive, though I haven't looked at it in a while. I know what I did was wrong, at least by society's standards, but I don't feel bad about it. I saw a side of people that they never show the world, and it fascinated me. It still does. If you are a tenant reading this, maybe you should take a closer look at your smoke detectors. Not that it'll help. You won't find anything unless I want you to. I am not writing this for sympathy, and I am definitely not asking for forgiveness. I know what I did, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Call me evil if you want, I don't care. This is my confession. A few years ago, I met someone I'll call Matt. That's not his real name, but it doesn't matter. Matt was the kind of guy everyone liked. Smart, charming, always the center of attention. The kind of person who made life look effortless. I hated him the moment I met him. At first, it wasn't anything serious. Just a passing thought, a flicker of jealousy. But the more I saw him, the more that feeling grew. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was resentment. Why did he get to have it all while the rest of us scraped by? So, I decided to do something about it. I didn't approach him with a plan. It just sort of happened. I acted friendly, laughed at his jokes, asked him about his life. He thought I was his friend. That was the beauty of it. He trusted me completely, never suspecting that I was the one slowly tearing his life apart. The first thing I did was spread a few rumors. Nothing huge at first, just little seeds of doubt. I told a coworker that Matt had been bad-mouthing them behind their back. Then I hinted to someone else that he'd stolen credit for a project. It didn't take much. People love gossip, and once they have a reason to doubt someone, they'll start seeing problems everywhere. It worked better than I expected. Matt started noticing that people were acting differently around him, colder, more distant. He couldn't figure out why. And I was right there, pretending to comfort him, feeding him lies to make him question himself even more. The next step was his job. Matt was good at what he did, but I made sure to sabotage him every chance I got. I'd accidentally delete his work, misplace important documents, and spread rumors about his reliability to our boss. When a promotion opportunity came up, I made sure he didn't get it. I even went so far as to steal one of his ideas and present it as my own. He never saw it coming. By the time he lost his job, he was already on edge. His confidence was shot, and he'd started drinking more, trying to cope. I watched as he spiraled, always there to pretend I cared. But I wasn't done. Matt had been dating someone for a few years, someone he really loved. She was the last stable thing in his life, and I couldn't let that stand. So I started planting doubts in her head too. I told her about Matt's drinking problem, how he'd been acting weird at work, how I'd seen him flirting with other women. None of it was true, of course. But she believed me. They broke up a few months later. By then, Matt was a wreck. No job, no girlfriend, no friends, thanks to me. He started couch surfing, then eventually ran out of places to go. The last time I saw him, he was sitting on a bench downtown, his clothes dirty, his face hollow. He didn't even recognize me when I walked past. That was 2 years ago. I've heard through the grapevine that he's homeless now. I don't know where he is. and honestly, I don't care. He was a pest, and I got... The world doesn't miss people like Matt, no matter how much they shine on the surface. Some of you might think I am cruel, and maybe I am. But here's the thing. I don't feel bad about what I did. Matt had everything handed to him, and I took it away piece by piece. It wasn't even that hard. All it took was patience, and the right lies at the right time. People are fragile. It's easy to break them if you know where to push. And I do. This might make me sound like a terrible person, but honestly, I don't care. Life's a game, and if you are not smart enough to play it, that's on you. I am not asking for sympathy or forgiveness. I am just here to lay it all out because, honestly, I am kind of proud of what I pulled off. A few years ago, I met this guy at a bar. Let's call him Eric. I don't even remember why we started talking. He seemed friendly, maybe a little too trusting. The kind of guy who probably never thought twice about the people around him. I let him buy me a drink, and we talked for a bit. I don't think he even realized how much he gave away during that short conversation. He told me about his job, his upcoming vacation, and how his wallet got stolen last year. That last part stuck with me. He said he had a new ID, new credit cards, everything. He even joked about how he kept his social security card in his wallet now so he'd never lose track of it. I knew right then that I could use him. When he got up to use the bathroom, he left his jacket on the back of his chair. I waited until no one was looking, then went through his pockets. His ID and a credit card were in there, just like I hoped. I snapped a quick photo of both with my phone and put them back. He never noticed. That was all he needed. The next day, I got to work. With the info I'd taken, I started opening accounts in his name. Credit cards, store accounts, even a cell phone plan. It was shockingly easy. No one ever questioned it. As long as I had his social security number and date of birth, which I got from some quick online searches, I could be Eric whenever I wanted. At first, it was just about the money. I racked up thousands of dollars on the new cards, bought things I'd never be able to afford on my own. Electronics, designer clothes, even a used car. I'd sell most of it for cash, but I kept some of the nicer stuff for myself. But then I realized I could do more. I started applying for jobs in his name. Not my real name, not my real credit history. His. It opened doors for me that I never could have walked through otherwise. I got hired at a corporate office where no one even questioned my identity. I used everything, from paychecks to company records. And the best part? He had no idea. For months, I lived as Eric during the day and went back to my own life at night. It was like having a second identity, a second chance at everything I'd screwed up in my own life. I still get mail for him. Credit card statements, utility bills, collection notices. Most of it goes straight into the trash. But every now and then I'll open one just to see how much trouble I've caused. His credit is ruined, by the way. I made sure of that. He probably can't even qualify for a payday loan at this point. Do I feel bad? Not really. He should have been more careful. If you are stupid enough to leave your information lying around, you deserve what happens to you. The only thing I worry about sometimes is getting caught. If he ever reports the fraud, here is a chance it could come back to me. But so far, nothing. Maybe he's too embarrassed. Or maybe he just doesn't know how deep this goes. Either way, I am not losing any sleep over it. I know some of you are probably thinking, why are you admitting this? Honestly, I just wanted to share. It feels good to know how far I've gotten with this, how easy it was to take someone's entire life and use it for my own gain. And if Eric ever reads this, well, good luck putting the pieces back together, man. You are going to need it. I don't expect anyone to understand why I did what I did, but I am putting this out here. It's been stuck in my head for too long. For 8 years, I secretly lived in the attic of a rental house without the tenants ever knowing. I was careful, quiet, and smart about it, and while I thought I was just surviving, some of the things I did or didn't do still bother me, even if I don't feel the guilt I probably should. It all started when I was at rock bottom. I was homeless, out of options, and wandering the streets. One night, I saw an empty house with a for rent sign in the yard. The attic window was cracked open, and I climbed in. I didn't have a plan, just the overwhelming need for somewhere to hide. I told myself it would only be for a night or two, but you know how it goes. By the time the first family moved in, I'd already carved out a little corner for myself up there. The attic was cramped and hot in the summer, freezing in the winter, but it worked. I'd come down at night when they were asleep, taking just enough food to avoid suspicion. Bread, canned soup, little things they wouldn't notice. I learned to stay invisible. People don't look for what they don't expect, and the attic door was tucked away in a storage closet they never used. As long as I stayed quiet, it was like I didn't exist. The weird part is how quickly you get used to it. Listening to them talk, laugh, argue. It was like background noise to me. I knew their routines, their habits, their lives, but I didn't feel connected to them. They were just there. I was a ghost in their house, and that suited me fine. The tenants changed over the years. Families moved out, new ones moved in. Each time, I'd lay low for a bit, waiting to see if they'd notice anything. No one ever did. I'd gotten good at hiding, but then there was the family with the dad and his teenage daughter. That's where things got complicated. The girl had asthma, bad asthma. I heard her coughing all the time, especially at night. It didn't bother me at first, but then one night, I was sneaking through the kitchen when I heard her wheezing from the living room. It was louder than usual, strained. I looked around the corner and saw her struggling to breathe, clutching at her chest. Her inhaler was on the coffee table, just a few feet away, but she couldn't seem to grab it. I froze. I could have helped her, grabbed the inhaler, maybe even called for her dad. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching. You might think it was fear that stopped me, and maybe that's part of it. I didn't want to get caught. But the truth is, a bigger part of me didn't see it as my problem. She wasn't going to die. At least I didn't think so. Eventually, she managed to grab the inhaler and get herself under control. I stayed hidden until she went back to bed, then slipped back upstairs. Like nothing happened. I don't feel proud of it, but I don't feel guilty either. It's just what happened. I stayed in that house for another year after that. By then, I'd started to feel restless, like I was pushing my luck. The dad worked nights, and the girl was often alone. She started hearing things, creaks, bumps, and once mentioned to her dad that she thought someone was in the house. That was my cue to leave. I waited for them to go out one day, packed up my stuff, and climbed down for the last time. I don't think they ever realized how close they'd come to finding me. Now, I live in a small apartment I pay for, with a real job. It's not much, but it's mine. Sometimes I think about those years in the attic and wonder if they ever felt like something was off. Food disappearing, little noises in the night. I doubt it. People don't notice what they're not looking for. I know what I did wasn't right, but I'm not sure I'd do anything differently if I had to go back. Survival makes you do things you wouldn't expect. For me, it meant living in the shadows and staying quiet while the world carried on below me. And honestly, I think I got away with it. Breakups are supposed to be a chance to move on, right? To let go and rebuild your life. Yeah, that's not how I work. When my ex dumped me, I didn't cry, beg, or try to win them back. No, I got even. And if you think that makes me the bad guy, I don't care. Deserved every bit of what I did. It started small, like most things do. After we broke up, I couldn't stop checking their social media. Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. It wasn't about missing them. I just wanted to know what they were doing without me. Were they happier? Were they struggling? Did they already have someone else? That's when I noticed a pattern. They were fine, too fine, posting pictures with friends, going to events, living their life like I hadn't even mattered. And then there was the new relationship. I saw a post of them with someone new, all smiles and hashtags about new beginnings. It made my blood boil. So I created my first fake account. It was easy, just some random photos I pulled off the internet, a generic name, and a believable bio. I used it to follow them and their new partner, watching everything they posted, learning about their routines and their lives. But watching wasn't enough. I started leaving comments, little jabs that seemed innocent, but planted seeds of doubt. On my ex's posts, I'd write things like, "Didn't you just go here with someone else last month?" On their partner's posts, I'd hint that my ex wasn't who they thought they were. It worked. Within weeks, their relationship was on the rocks. That was just the beginning. I created more accounts, each one with a different personality. One was a supportive friend who messaged their partner privately, warning them about my ex's red flags. Another was an angry victim, claiming my ex had cheated on them in the past. I even made an account pretending to be someone my ex had ghosted, posting public comments about how heartless they were. Their relationship didn't stand a chance. But I wasn't done. I started digging deeper into their life, finding anything I could use. Old photos, private posts, even email addresses. I found out where they worked, who they hung out with, what projects they were working on. I knew more about their life than they probably did. That's when I decided to hit them, where it really hurt. I sent an anonymous email to their boss, using a burner account I'd set up. I claimed my ex was slacking off at work, drinking during office hours, and using company resources for personal gain. I attached fake screenshots of proof, emails I'd doctored and messages I'd faked. It worked. They lost their job within a month. By then, they were spiraling. No job, no relationship, no idea why everything was falling apart. They posted less and less on social, eventually deleting their accounts altogether. That should have been the end of it, but I wasn't satisfied. I tracked down their family members and friends, using my fake accounts to spread more lies. I told one of their cousins they'd been talking behind their back, and I hinted to their closest friends that they'd been using them for money. It wasn't long before my ex was completely isolated. You'd think I'd feel bad about it, but I don't. They deserved it. For leaving me, for moving on so quickly, for acting like I was nothing more than a stepping stone in their perfect little life. I still check on them occasionally, just to see if they've managed to crawl out of the hole I put them in. From what I can tell, they're still struggling. No stable job, no close friends, no online presence. It's like they disappeared, which is exactly what I wanted. And if they ever try to rebuild, well, I've still got my accounts, my burner emails, and a list of their secrets. Because the truth is, I am not done. I don't think I ever will be. So, there you have it. Confessions without shame. Choices made in the name of selfish desires. And the twisted satisfaction of lives unraveled. Maybe you are feeling a little unsettled. Maybe you are questioning the faces you pass on the street, wondering what secrets they hide behind polite smiles. Or maybe, just maybe, you're realizing how easily the mask of humanity can slip. These stories aren't just about what people are capable of. They're a mirror, a reminder that, in the right circumstances, anyone could step into the shadows. Even you. If these stories kept you on edge, you might want to hit that subscribe button. I'll be back with more confessions. Darker, deeper, and even harder to forget. But for now, I'll leave you with this. Secrets are everywhere, in the whispers of the people closest to you, in the thoughts they don't say aloud, in the choices you hope no one ever finds out about. Thank you for watching. And remember, it's not just a story if it lingers with you after the screen goes dark.